Were there any kind of any of the chapters in your book that helped you get through that kind of traumatic time?
Well, I wrote the last book almost entirely when I was so ill I could barely make it to the typewriter.
Yeah.
So the computer, but look, man, when you're in the depths of catastrophe, you have the support and love of your family, if you're fortunate, and your friends, and I had no shortage of that, thank God. But I was writing this book, and, I wanted to write it, and as far as I was concerned, it was important that I do it, and that gave me something to live for continually, and you need something meaningful to set against suffering. That's what you have to set against suffering, not happiness. Sometimes you don't have, that's not an option sometimes. Happiness is like, I don't think I had any happiness at all for 3 years, pretty much.
And what is...
It was dire. Well, my wife, she spent a year hovering on the brink of death in a variety of different ways. Before that, my daughter had catastrophic health problems, which have mostly resolved. And then I got extremely ill, so we've been in, and at the same time, we were facing social pressure of like an unparalleled magnitude, people trying to, bring this enterprise to a halt, I suppose. That's probably the right way to think about it. Most of that time, I was hoping that I would die. I've been grateful for the good things that have happened to me, but I don't think I was grateful enough before just for mundane normality,
Yeah.
And, you think you don't have everything you could have, and perhaps that's true, but if you can sit down and breathe, there's lots of people who don't have that.
Yeah. And I read somewhere that you couldn't even listen to music.
Oh, no.
Why? And just why is
well,
that?
I had no positive emotion at all, and it was too sensory. Like I was very sensitive to anything that was any sensory input at all. I mean, last year when I was in Florida, I would get up at about 8 in the morning because I couldn't sleep anymore, and then I'm pretty much on the couch till 3, but I had to have earplugs in and like a covering over my eyes. At that point, I could still lay down, so I could. Well, I wasn't resting, but I at least wasn't moving.
So I'm curious with you. Do you remember the first song that you were able to listen to when you came out of your illness?
I think it was probably something by Arcade Fire.
Right.
I really like Arcade Fire. I think they're great.
Yeah.
And
what was that? That must have just been to be able to...
Oh man, it was such a relief. And now I've been listening to music like mad. My wife and I, we spend about 5 hours a week dancing upstairs in our...
It's all right.
Like for a long time, 2 years, every evening I spent with her, I thought would probably be the last one.
Yeah.
So the fact that that's not the case anymore, and that we can listen to music. I have these long playlists that I've been curating for years. That we have an oldies romance playlist that's jazz singers from pretty much the 20s through the 50s, some 60s stuff. I'm
curious as well, when you're kind of curating these kind of like playlists, are you able to be in the zone, or are you watching her reaction to the music? Because that's always the thing I struggle with.
Well, I tend to put the playlist together, and then our rule is she has veto power, and so, if there's a song on there that she doesn't want to listen to repeatedly when we're driving in our car or whatever, then I'll take it off. And she is very good at deciding when something shouldn't be around anymore and getting rid of it.
Yeah.
So, which was always terrifying, by the way, to our children when they had friends come over, because when they first come over, we'd tell them, we're really happy that you're here, and you're welcome. And we meant it. I think teenagers are pretty funny with their caustic sense of humor and their proclivity to misbehave. But the second part of the message was, but if you do anything stupid and we never have to see you again, that actually isn't a problem for us.
Hang on. Is that how you would greet them with that?
Yes.
That is fucking terrifying.
Yeah, well, it was so funny though, because they were terrified of me when they first came over, which was a good thing. But after they'd been over 5 times, they weren't terrified of me.
Of course.
But they were definitely terrified of Tammy.
Right.
So, yeah, because she has a stronger spine than me in many ways. Because as it turns out, I'm a very agreeable person. I don't like conflict at all.
Yeah.
And she's a little more stiff-spined in that regard, so. I think I take very little for granted, And I mean, I think I take even less for granted than you might think. I told you that I don't take it for granted that you can all sit here peacefully, you know. And that is how I look at the world, is that if it isn't burning in rack and ruins, then I think it's a bloody miracle. And the fact that things have gone well for me and that I'm still standing, which is also a miracle of sorts, you know. I mean, there were probably 30 different scandalous episodes that anyone with any sense would have thought would finish me. And they've all backfired. And that's also... I also don't understand that. It's like, I don't understand that. I get attacked in the New York Times, and my friends call me, who are New York Times readers, and they say, you've had it this time, because that was the New York Times, you know. You're not going to recover from that. And I think, well, that's probably true. I mean, I was expecting it to happen all along, and then I wait, and then, you know, everybody clamors at me, and then I don't respond too much to that, and it starts to die away, and then all the supporters come out. And then there's 100 people who clamor and 10,000 supporters. And, you know, here's something I can tell you about my life that's really remarkable. So, you know, if you just read the press, well, you'd have all sorts of ideas about me. I mean, you know, that I'm a bigot in the broadest possible sense. And so that's, you know, racist, sexist, homophobic, ethnocentric, white nationalist, alt-right,
Islamophobic,
Nazi, Hitler,
homophobic,
all of those things. And you'd think that there was just nothing but hatred, although I have been treated well by many journalists. But you could easily get that sense that, like, I live in a world where I'm surrounded by hatred. And that is absolutely not true. It's so not true that it's, you know, there are lies, and then there are anti-truths. And an anti-truth is even worse than a lie. It's like the ultimate form of lie. And that isn't what my life is like at all. What my life is like is that I travel with my wife, and wherever we go, and I mean that literally, wherever we go. And we've been to I don't know how many countries in the last year. It's like, I don't know how many. 30, 40, many countries. If I go down the street, or if I'm in an airport, or if I'm in a cafe, or if I'm in a movie theater, or if I'm in a mechanic's shop, some person comes up to me every 10 minutes and says, I hope I'm not disturbing you. And they're very, very polite. And they say, I've been listening to your lectures, or I've been watching your YouTube videos, or I read your book, and I was in this dreadful place 6 months ago. And then they tell me a little bit about the particulars of that little corner of hell they were ensconced in. And then they say, well, I've been trying to develop a vision for my life, or I've been trying to take more responsibility, or I've been trying to be grateful for my job, mundane though it may be, or I've decided that I'm going to try to put my family together and make peace, and I've really been trying, and it's really working, and things are way better, and thank you. If you could imagine, if you could ask for what you wanted, hey, you could have anything you wanted. You might think, it would be lovely if I could live my life in a manner so that wherever I went in the world, perfect strangers would come up to me, one after the other, and tell me that they're suffering much less, that their families are in better shape, and that their lives are on course because they took they took to heart something that I was communicating. That's as good as it gets, as far as I can tell.